There is a moment in every life when you decide to rise, to stand taller than your fear, to speak louder than your doubt, to chase the vision that sets your soul on fire. This is that moment, and here we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire, and truths that set you free. This is Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where hope has a voice, and that voice is yours. And welcome to another episode, young ladies and gentlemen out there. And I got to tell you, this is we haven't even done this yet, and I think that this is going to be one of my favorite episodes of all time. So I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. Brachelle's here. Brachelle, how are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. We just talked about spending money on coffee, and if it's good quality and it's got 3 shots, I think I'm good to go and ready for the day. We have an amazing guest today. Would you like to introduce him?
I would. His name is Chris
Okay.
Orcutt. He soon is going to have 20 novels. If you look behind him right there, and if you look right here, Bodaciously True and Totally Awesome. This is the first book of a series of 9, I do believe. And this one is coming out in January. So make sure that you put it in your mind to get this book. It is a really fun read, and it takes you back. It reminds me of, and by the way, before I get off on a tangent, Chris, how are you? It's nice to see you.
I'm doing great. I'm just basking in the praise or something. I'm just sitting here basking in what you're saying. I'm like, who is this guy?
Well, the first thing I got to tell you is, do you remember, and so sadly that he's passed, but Rob Reiner and Stand By Me?
I know. Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy. I can't believe it, but it speaks to the issues of addiction and crime and everything going on in this country today. But it's terrible. Yes. But you mentioned Stand By Me. Yes.
That movie was a snapshot of the 50s at that particular time, late 50s, maybe early 60s. And your book, which is based in the 80s, and the hero is a young man who is learning how to be a young man, and all the interesting things that happened to him. And it made me think of all the interesting things that happened to me when in my awakening from being a 12-year-old to then being a 14 and 15-year-old boy, and you know what happens then, and stuff. So it's a great read, and he got to meet President Reagan, and I would thank you for writing it. It's a nostalgic turn to go back to those of the, and if you've never, as an example, Brachelle was not here in the 80s. She was born in 99, and so, but it would be a great read for you to go back and to, because the music of the 80s, the times, it was before the internet, it was all of that kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about all that. But Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here. And you too, Rochelle. It's
of course. Well, Chris, I'm so curious what even started all of this?
That's a great question, Rochelle. Sometimes I wonder how I got started on this journey, but it was about 11 years ago. I think I became kind of nostalgic about my own childhood, and particularly my own teenage years. Let me see, 11 years ago, it was around the 30th anniversary or 25th reunion time. And I started wondering about, people that I went to school with and how they were faring. I started remembering, seminal events that occurred for me and my friends back in the mid 80s. And I was also reflecting on just how great the 80s were a great time to be a teenager in this country. We didn't have the internet. The internet giveth and the internet taketh away. That's the way I look at it. It's been great in some respects. It's been an egalitarian force, giving more people access to more information.
Right.
But it's also become in some places, it's become a cesspool of hate and intolerance. And, in some places it can be, propagate actual inaccuracies.
Yeah.
We didn't have that back in the 80s. We had a lot of freedom. We had our music. We had MTV. We didn't know about, it's little things like this, Kevin. It's like, Rochelle, it's back in the 80s, mid 80s, something could happen. Say there was a flood in Bangladesh, which is a terrible tragedy. But we wouldn't find out about things like that for weeks afterward. Right, Kevin?
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
these terrible things would happen.
Yeah.
But young people today are they're besieged on a moment by moment basis, 24/7. They're learning about tragedies and problems in the world the second they happen. And it was a kind of this period of innocence, and there's an extent to which it was good to be ignorant about some of these things, because
Yep.
when you think about it, how much of it can you change? You can't.
Yep.
You can't change a lot of these things. So I, had this kind of pining for that period, and the novel began, Rochelle, with some self-introspection, what I call memory mining, where I was kind of mining the depths of my own memory about events. And that the first draft had quite a few autobiographical elements to it. But then as I wrote the second draft and the third draft, etc., the autobiographical elements slipped away, and the characters of their own rights, Avery Ace Craig being the hero of the 9 books, and all of his friends, they started to come up, and their fictional adventures started to come up. But it really began with introspection about my own past, my own years as a teen in the 80s. And the last thing I would add to that is I was looking at how young people today, how scheduled their lives were, how involved their parents are or have been. And I was comparing it to my own experience and the experience of many of my friends, most of my friends who grew up in the 80s or were teens in the 80s. And I'm not going to say that we were outright unparented, but we were pretty underparented. Our parents, I think they did the best they could, but our parents' generation they're the me generation, that going back to the 60s and 70s, they're the me generation. And they were very involved in their own lives and building their careers. And the 80s was also a difficult time economically. But so all of these things kind of coalesced and got me thinking about, as I started to write, I was like, I thought initially I would just be writing a simple coming of age novel, something like The Catcher in the Rye. But as I kept going with it, and the adventures and the scenes and the conflicts just kept building and building and building, I said to myself, well, what if you just wrote the ultimate coming of age novel? why don't you just go all the way with this and make it a cross between Fast Times at Ridgemont High and War and Peace? And so that's what I did.
I love that.
And you know, one of the things that some of the folks, and by the way, this book comes out in January, but some of the early reviews say, you know, it's set in the 80s, but if your coming of age time was in the 70s or the 60s or the 90s, that it translates very, very well into that, because we all have the same human experience. As an example, I know that in this book, he has the coming of age moments in time when he becomes a teenager and his sexuality is released. And unfortunately, I don't know if you know this, but there doesn't seem to be a manual about how to do that.
I know.
It's like, it's so, and so if I could tell this story just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
My first kiss. Now, I went to a Lutheran school, and there were like 15 kids, and Michelle's never heard this story. There were like 15 kids. And so I grew up with these girls, there were 6 of them, and none of them interested me, and I didn't interest them. And so when I went to a high school, I went to Juanita High School in Kirkland, there were 2,000 kids. And so there were 1,000 girls, and somebody had to like me. And so we
playing the percentages.
Exactly. But the one thing that I always remembered was the first kiss. Michelle, do you remember your first kiss?
I do. It was magical. It was to a Rihanna song.
Oh, my first kiss was horrific because I did not know, because I never kissed a girl before. I didn't know that in some cases they open their mouth, and then there's the tongue thing and all that's going on. It scared the hell out of me. Yes. It was like, that's the grossest thing I've ever heard. Who'd want to do that? And stuff. So
my first kiss happened, believe it or not. I didn't try. I was kissed by a girl in kindergarten on the lawn outside it was during recess, and this girl, I can't remember her last name, but her first name was Tracy. This was in Dexter, Maine, where I grew up as a young boy. And out of nowhere, she just came up to me and grabbed me and kissed me. And, you know, I was like, what happened? You know, the whole rest of the day, I was like, what, you know, and then I think, if I remember correctly, there was a long dearth period of no kissing until, you know, getting to junior high or high school. But that was my first kiss story.
And by the way, Danny Keyman says, love the combo, Fast Times meets War and Peace. That's really cool. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you have a comment for Chris or have a thought, we would love for you to comment in on it, because this is he's written. You've been a writer for a long time, and Michelle, before you got here, we were talking about the fact that he has 20 typewriters. He does not use a computer to write. He uses either pencil and legal pad or a typewriter, and some of them are vintage typewriters that you can't even find them anymore. They're not even available.
Amazing.
Well, I do want to be clear that I don't want people to think that they, buy this and it's going to be a bunch of pasted together typewriter pages. No. I do use computers later in the process, but for the first drafts, for the first draft and usually the second draft, I use either my IBM Selectric 3, which is an electric typewriter, or one of my 19 manual typewriters, or I use a pencil. And I was saying to Kevin earlier, briefly, because how many people are really interested in the typewriter part? The reason why I use those more manual devices is because they force you to slow down, and you don't use the first idea that occurs to you the way you do when you're typing on a computer. But if you're typing on a typewriter or you're writing in pencil, you have to, your thinking has to slow down to go along with the rhythm of using the typewriter or the pencil. There's also the physical connection between your hand and the object, doing the writing. I wanted to say one thing earlier that you mentioned about the time machine quality of Bodaciously, Kevin. And that is the thing that has been most surprising to me. I set out to write something that was a time machine for people, for my generation, to go back to the 80s, back to when we were teens in the mid 80s. And the thing that's been most surprising to me in getting feedback from early reviewers and early readers is I've created, it seems, a time machine back to whenever somebody was a teen. I've had people in their early 20s saying, this is just like I was when I was in high school 5 years ago. And I've had people like my parents and older say to me, this reminds me of when I was a teen back in the 50s. That's been really gratifying, because I thought I was just going to, if I could just write something that was accurate to the 80s, that would be great. But I think the reason why that came about is, all along, my mission with this has been to make this a coming of age story for all time. And the way I wanted to do it was to get at the emotional core of what it is to be that age. And, that's what I strove to do.
And by the way, Brishelle, we're talking to Chris Orcutt, and if they want to find his website, how do they do it?
Yes, you can go to orcutt.net. That is orcutt.net/weblog, and it will take you straight to his page. It tells you about him, shows you all of the books. And let's talk about more of the writing process that you were just talking about when we come back from this break, Chris, because I could imagine how many times it changed and transpired into something bigger than you could have imagined.
Yeah,
Well,
that's really accurate, Rochelle, because that's what it does. This stuff. Look, the only people who can know start to finish what the novel is going to end up being like are people who write from an outline. Now, listen, that has its place. Okay, there's formula fiction out there that works great for. And if you're a screenwriter, for example, by necessity, you've got to work from an outline. You've got to have a step sheet. You got to know where it's going to go.
Let's take our quick break so that I want to hear everything you have to say, especially with what you just said when it comes to being in the zone, as they call it. So I'm going to let Kevin take us, and we'll be right back.
And also, we have got a bunch of people that have commented in, and so we need to get to those as well, including one that I think will be particularly heartfelt for you. We'll be right back in 43 seconds. Everybody stay right where you are. We'll be right back. Here is another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. The world is full of people who would die for someone they love. But what about living for them? Waking up early to take care of your health. Letting go of the habits that steal your years. Choosing rest instead of running yourself empty. The truth is, your family doesn't want a hero who dies for them. They want a parent who stays. A friend who grows old with them. A soul who chooses life every single day. Don't just die for love. Live for it. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin. Brishelle is right there. And Chris Orcutt, he is a fabulous author of note. He's got the great book out, which is right there, Bodaciously True and Totally Awesome. And it's book 1 of 9. And Brishelle, before we go too far, let's get caught up on the comments, and because everybody's got, and there's some people that got some great questions. One is first of all, we're so excited about his novels. They've read every one of them, and he says, I honestly love them all. But then a question that was going to come up at one point, but we'll have this person ask it instead. Which one of your books is your favorite?
Is this question to me?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't have children. All right. It's been a conscious choice between my wife and me. I love other people's children. I think children are wonderful. My books are my children. And to ask me which one is my favorite, it's kind of like, which child is your favorite? I would say I don't really have a favorite book that I've written. I have a favorite aspect. Each one of my books, I have something, it has something about it that I love, that I just. So, for example, in my Dakota novels, I love the wit and banter between the detectives Dakota Stevens and Svetlana Krush. I love it because I didn't have to create any of that. They just kind of ran up on stage and started having this interaction. And so I love that aspect of those mysteries. I would say, with the Bodaciously books, my favorite aspect of them is it's the weaving of the detail from that period and the verisimilitude, the resemblance to real life with these fictional adventures. And as the books go on, readers are going to see that, President Reagan and Senator Kennedy appear in episode 1. They end up coming back in later episodes, but there are other celebrities who have since passed that Avery Ace Craig has adventures with or interactions with. Eddie Van Halen makes an appearance. Michael Jackson makes an appearance later on. Robert Palmer, Whitney Houston. And there's an aspect of the movie from the 70s with Peter Sellers. It was called Being There. Being There was this movie that Peter Sellers did, and the premise was there's this gardener named Chauncey who, just by virtue of being in the right place at the right time, gets elevated to these grandiose proportions. And that's, to some extent, there's a sense in which that happens for Avery. It's kind of, and the other idea that intrigued me that I kind of wove into the narrative was a quote I read a long time ago, or a couple of them. One is, why did the dog run up the tree? Because it didn't know it couldn't. And so there's that element of Avery. He does these things that other people consider impossible, or that just seem, above and beyond what is possible. But he does it because he doesn't know. He's 16 years old. He doesn't know he's not supposed to be able to do X, Y, Z. The other quote that really intrigued me a long time ago is another writer. I can't remember his name. He said, the best cure for inexperience is being 16. And those ideas just kind of percolated with me for a long time. And they come out in the story with Avery's interactions with these people.
I couldn't agree more. And Rochelle, we've got more comments.
Yes. Chris is able to paint a picture in your mind while reading his books. Honestly, I'm so intrigued by them and hearing what everybody is saying, because there's certain books where you can feel and see what you're reading. And Jazzler says, exactly, Chris is the savant in my opinion. And
did you ever think you'd be called a savant, young man?
No. I just do what I do, and
Well, but a lot of people love what you do,
Yeah.
and congratulations on that, and I'm really excited for you for the 9 books in this whole series. What got you thinking, well, let's see, I want to write a book about the 80s. Okay, I'll write 9. And
well,
how did
yeah,
that come about?
I mean, that's a great point, Kevin. I mean, when I started this out, I think I was saying earlier that I just thought I was going to write another coming of age novel. I thought, this was going to be the 80s answer to Catcher in the Rye. Okay. Because we all, at least my growing up, everybody had to read The Catcher in the Rye. And there are a lot of great things about that novel, but there are a lot today, in my opinion, there are a lot of things about it that are dated. And I just, I got started, I got writing it. And the thing that I recognized as I went along is when you're that age, whatever decade you were a teen in, everything is epic. Everything is epic to you. Everything is new.
Yep.
Everything, all of the sensations are new. The emotions are new. The experiences are brand new. Everything feels larger than life. It feels just off the charts. If you had a meter that was measuring your reaction to it, it would be, it would be in the red constantly. And so as I was writing, and one scene would beget another scene, or like John Steinbeck said when he was writing East of Eden, he said, the book just keeps having pups. It keeps whelping pups. Well, that's the same experience that I had. I would write this scene, and then 5 more scenes would come out of that. Now, maybe only 2 of them were good, but they just kept begetting more and more and more. And so I didn't start out to write something that was twice the length of War and Peace. It just happened that way. And when I got, about 6 years into this, I started saying to myself, well, look, nobody's going to sit down and read something War and Peace length or twice the length of War and Peace. And that's when I took the novel. It's one gigantic novel. Okay. These 9 books back here, it's one gigantic novel. And I just split it up into 9 episodes or 9 books.
Well, what
but I
was it like
didn't
when you
intend to,
finished
I
it
didn't
then?
set out to do it. What's that?
What was it like when you finished? Was it like,
It's like losing your your best friend.
did you ever feel like it wouldn't end at one point?
Oh, absolutely. Rochelle, that's a great point. I mean, if you were to talk to my wife, she will tell you stories. I mean, every morning. I mean, first of all, you're writing about teenagers. I don't have children. I know many of my friends have children, but there's the constant anxiety about what the hell are they going to do next here? They're getting into trouble left and right and making bad decisions. And there's the discomfort with that, as the writer. See, you, the author, it's not your job to interfere. It's not your job to moralize. If you start moralizing, no, you character, you can't do that. The fiction is just going to die. It's just going to sit there like a dead log. Your job, Anton Chekhov, the Russian short story writer, said, your job as the author is to simply put the characters on the stage and let them go about their business, have their interactions, have the story go where it wants to go. And that's an uncomfortable state to be in, Rochelle. It's like every morning, you're uncomfortable with potentially where the story's going. There's also the uncertainty. You don't always know exactly where it's going to go. E.L. Doctorow, the American novelist, he said that writing a novel is like driving across the country at night using only your headlights. In other words, you only have as far as your headlights can reach. That's as far as you can see ahead. I would add to that, I think he's mostly right there, but I would add to that, it's doing that, driving across the country at night, only seeing as far as your headlights, but it's also torrential rain, mudslides, detours. You don't know where things are going all the time. And to answer your original question, there were times I was like, is this damn thing ever going to end? I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm sick of it. I don't want to, I don't want to hear it, And then I would say to my wife, I'd be like, is anybody going to want to read this? Is anybody going to like it? Or are they going to hate it? And you have to work through all of those doubts on a daily basis.
Well, they love it, Chris. Congratulations.
Well, they don't all love it. I'm going to be honest with you.
And that's okay.
What I'm seeing in the advanced readers, among the advanced readers, it's about 75-80% of them love it. I mean, just off the charts, love it. 4 and 5 stars. And it took me back, and it's wonderful. And then you got about 20-25% that hate it. They're just like,
you gotta have some of those. It keeps
I mean, I want the controversy. I say bring it on. Look, well, there's quite a bit of sex in there, but guess what? That's the reality. That's the reality.
Life.
That's what I wanted when I was 16 was quite a lot of sex. And
exactly.
I never reached my goal, but I was attaining to it. By the way, Chris Orcutt is with us, and Chris, there's a special band that we would love you to meet right now. His name is Samuel. He has a program in Kenya, and Rochelle, let's read this and then you tell.
Yes. Hi, Samuel. Hi, everybody. They say greetings, Brother Kevin, Sister Rochelle, and guest Brother Chris Orcutt. Receive greetings from Kaiperia Restoring Hope Center, based in Kaiperia slums in the Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks for this wonderful favorite program, Positive Talk Radio Show. We are watching and listening to you live. Thank you for highlighting our weekly feeding program to the world. Wishing you all a happy, prosperous New Year 2026. We love you guys so much. And just to catch you up right before we go to break, Chris, he feeds 370 children and their parents every Saturday, and also just opened an education program in the
positive
slums.
Side of the internet. This is, what I was talking about.
We're here for it. Yeah. We love Samuel. And
this is the miracle. This is the miracle of the internet right here.
It really is, because we're talking to you in New York, and I'm in Seattle. She's in Salt Lake, and we're talking to somebody in Kenya. And there are 20 to 30 people in a large schoolroom with a big screen TV watching this episode. And then
hello there. I hope to get over to Africa at some point.
Yes, let's go together.
Perfect. Well, we're going to end up having to do that eventually anyway. But Chris Orcutt is with us, and we've got more comments. But you are a prolific young man. You got a lot of followers. We need to take this quick break, and then we will be right back. And then we're going to forego the last break. So this is the last break of the show. And then we're going to talk to Chris the rest of the hour. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Are you looking for your daily dose of inspiration? Stay connected to all your favorite shows, music, and news with the Brushwood Media Network app. From Positive Talk Radio to Greatest Vibes Unplugged and so many more uplifting voices around the world, everything you need is right in one place. It's easy to use, too. Always available and designed to keep you inspired 24 hours a day. Go to brushwoodmedianetwork.com and download the app, and you will always have Brushwood Media, available on your smartphone. Download it now and make inspiration and music and conversation part of your everyday. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin. Rochelle is right there. Rochelle, we're having a fabulous conversation, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And Chris, I've been dying because I have to ask you, after we get to these comments, let's join those first. But I have a very, very curious question that's blowing up in my mind.
Okay.
So, Kevin, can we pull up some more comments? Perfect. I can't fathom the time that goes into writing. Larger than War and Peace. It's beyond my comprehension. Me too. I totally agree with that. And love is the transparency and directness of the message. He's always got a smooth delivery. We love to hear that. It's easy to read that way, huh? And could you see a movie come from this? I was gonna ask that too. Jay,
It's going to be a TV show. It's going to be a big TV show at least that's what I would think.
I would agree with you, Kevin. My initial when I've thought about that from time to time, I've foreseen it as if it were to appear on a screen, I think it would be best in a bingeable format. This is part of the reason why I'm publishing all 9 of these within a 2-year window, because I value the reader experience. Nobody wants to wait 5 years between books, or even 2 years between books. With Bodaciously, they're only going to have to wait 12 to 15 weeks before the next episode. But I will say that there's a part of me that, listen, if a producer shows up with a wheelbarrow full of gold, okay, then we can talk. It needs to be like the scene in The Count of Monte Cristo, when the Count of Monte Cristo has his assistant, Jacoby, I can't remember, but he has him go to a chateau outside of Paris, and he brings an ox cart full of gold and jewels and buys the estate from the guy. That's what I want. Okay. If somebody wants to produce this on TV, etc., forget a checkbook, forget direct deposit, come out here with a wheelbarrow of gold, and then we can talk.
Yep.
And their name is Netflix.
Yeah, sure. Guys,
Yep.
but I want to be clear. Gold. I'm not kidding.
I like your
kidding.
thinking. I'm on board with you. Somebody can show up right at your doorstep with the wheelbarrow.
And, I don't want to hear, because here's the thing. Look, J.D. Salinger, who the author of The Catcher in the Rye, he put into his will that will never be made into a movie or a television show, etc. It will never be done. And there's a sense in which I want people to read this. I'm a novelist. I'm a writer. Okay. I value the language, and is as great as it would be to have it on screen. I love
imagination,
literature.
right? It takes that away.
Yeah, it's
well, and the other thing that you need to consider, and so it better be a great big barrel of money, because when you give somebody the rights to your work, that gives them, when they create the screenplay and stuff, they can make changes, and then the producer can, and the director can, and it's got to be pure according to the vision that you have. So you need to maintain creative control of the entire process. And for 9 books, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I none of this has been a motivator for me. It's great if it's a bestseller. It would be great if it sold to Netflix or Apple TV, or somebody who came around with the wheelbarrow of gold. Okay. But that's not been my motivation at all. I love the process. I love the words. I love writing the story. I love sitting at, I have a drawing board like Charles Schulz had. I have a drawing board and I put my galley pages on the drawing board and I love moving passages around. I love finding le mot juste. I love finding the perfect word. That's the motivator for me. And
Oh, Chris, that made me think of my question.
great.
Did you have a favorite moment writing all 9 books? Was there one moment?
All right, in one moment in the writing or one moment in the story?
Either or.
I think one moment that stood out for me was it's the surprises, it's when the characters take off and do things, when they become fully animated and they're making their own decisions, when the characters do something or say something that is utterly their own. In other words, there's no sign of the author whatsoever in it.
Yeah.
Those are the magical moments. Those are the ones that make it worthwhile. So, for example, Avery has this interaction with a rival teenage kid whom he calls String Bean, okay, because he's really skinny and tall, and he calls him String Bean. And they have an interaction where they're watching this hotel desk clerk who's very attractive. They're watching her over a Dutch door, kind of like the movie Porky's, where they were peeping through a hole. They're watching her at a do collating and filing in an office, and they're watching her, from behind, etc. And the one character, String Bean, talks to Avery Ace Craig, and he talks to Ace, and he says, something like, get out of here. That's enough time. And Ace says to him, dude, do you ever brush your teeth? Because your breath stinks. Now that's it comes out there. But then the funny part was a callback that comes like 100 pages later, when a teacher is telling Ace and String Bean to stop fighting, to stop quarreling. And Avery, he says, you two stay away from each other. And Ace says, fine by me, sir. String Bean here never brushes his teeth, sir. And it was, to me, it's those moments where the characters just become their own, entirely their own people, and they say or do things that utterly surprise you. Those are my favorite moments. So it's hard to point at just one, but that's an example.
I have to ask you two things. Number one, when you were writing and you were going along and you were just writing word after word, did you ever laugh out loud?
Oh yeah, the one I just gave you. The best part, Kevin, though, is I've written it now, and it's been a couple of years since the whole thing has been written. And now it's just the polishing before publishing each episode. And I'm continually saying to my wife, as I reread books that I, now have just read it again, I haven't read them in a couple of years. And that's the best part, when I'm reading along and I forget that I wrote this thing. and I get to a point that's hilarious, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And then I put the book down and I go into my wife and I'm like, okay, so tell me how great this is. This is I mean,
that was going to be my second question. Did you ever have a writing session and then you get up and you go running to your wife and say, honey, you won't believe what just happened in the book?
Oh, well, absolutely. And I mean, I hate to think of it this way, but I'm as guilty of this as I think a lot of writers are, especially novelists, because we don't get that instant feedback. The only thing we have to go on is, a reader or a close reader that we have reading it. And there were times over the past 10 years where she would be reading a passage, and I would hear her laugh out loud from the other room, and then I come running out of my office, and I'm like, "Where are you? Where are you? What did you just laugh at?" It's a pathetic insecurity.
No,
we all
Awesome.
share.
You are birthing something that didn't exist before you got into it, and you're creating something that is going to be legendary in time because of all the things that you're doing. And we got more comments. I gotta read this one for you. Go ahead, Rochelle.
Reading and learning how Chris writes is just as fascinating as any of his books, which are all amazing stories. I think I agree. I haven't even read them. And then we have very impressive interview. We are so proud of you, Chris. That feels good to hear.
I have an inkling. There are a few comments in here. I have an inkling of who they are. I mean, I am not going to say who, but
well, somebody asked a great question.
Yes. Reading and learning how... Oh, wait, the other one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good. Are there any characters based on people in real life?
Well, the primary characters... Yeah, here's the thing. I've read a long time ago, and I kind of absorbed this. F. Scott Fitzgerald said, he's the author of The Great Gatsby, among other works. He said that if you set out to write a type, an archetype, you're going to end up with a cliche. But if you set out to write about a specific person, you're going to end up with an archetype. So what I did was, all of my characters are to some extent composites of various people I knew. So, Avery Ace Craig, the hero of the journey, the Odyssey here, has a few characteristics in common with me, obviously, but there are half a dozen other teen guys that I grew up with who have little impressions in his character. Caitlin Cray, one of the girls with whom he becomes involved, is a composite of 3 or 4 alpha mean girls whom I knew, or we've all known, Yeah. So, in that sense, are characters based on people in real life? They all are, because we have to start somewhere, and you've got to start with, but it's not a case of I take this person in real life and make a character around them.
Now, Chris, who was String Bean? We can make
oh
some.
No, String Bean was
Came from the ethers.
he's any smart ass, pain in the ass guy a teenage guy that you would have a rivalry with. He's just they're out there.
That dude.
What's that?
He's that dude.
Yeah, that dude. It's we've all known those guys. One of my best friends calls them Chads.
There you go.
And not to offend anybody who's named Chad. Okay,
We love you, Chad.
But my one of my best friends, he calls them Chads. He's like, they're the guys that are like, hey, how you doing, dude? It's all cool. So I've tried to get a lot of those people in there. They're the preppies. There are the jocks. There are the brainiacs, there are the computer nerds, there are the video game playing types, there are the mall rats, the people that hang around in the malls, motorheads, people into cars.
Yeah. I mean, and that's probably why people relate so much. It's a human experience of life. As he says, his books are worth all the money in the world. We agree. If you're hearing this and you're thinking, hey, I want to bring a wheelbarrow full of gold and make this into a series on Netflix, then let us know and we'll get you in touch with Chris.
I'm going to upgrade that from a wheelbarrow to an ox cart. Okay.
There we go.
I want a cart
better.
full of gold and jewels.
Okay.
And a notice that you maintain creative control.
Yeah, that's the big one. I so admire that. As far as filmmaking goes, I really admire people like Woody Allen and Quentin Tarantino, who really, they're auteurs, they handle just about every part of the process. Woody Allen starts out with a pencil or a typewriter and writing on his bed and writes the script, and he doesn't use a computer at all. He snips out the dialogue and then pastes it together onto a page. It's that idea of creative control. It's very attractive.
Well, and it's authentic. Otherwise, you're pulling and pushing something that it's not. And it came straight from you. I think it's crazy how one person could have. I could imagine how fun it was, because I remember being in 5th grade. We had a class. It was when I learned to type and I became obsessed with it. And I still remember feeling what I felt when I was writing these stories and what they were about and how they came to life.
Yeah.
And it was all from something within me, and pulling out experiences for your life, and then having all these people that are like, oh my gosh, Chris, I love this for this reason, and I relate to this for this reason. And you've brought generations of people together in a story that came from you.
Well,
it's amazing.
Thanks. I mean, I want to say that, to all of your listeners, though, that listen, maybe I have a lot of experience in doing this, and that's part of the reason why I was able to write 1.5 million words in these 9 books. But if I were to give a message to all of your viewers out there who want to do something creative, they want to do something, they want to accomplish something big, they've got a dream, they want to start a business, they want to write a novel, they want to do a painting, they want to record an album. The big thing I'd say is don't wait. Too many people are waiting for the ideal circumstances. They're waiting to get approval. They're waiting to get permission. They're waiting to get the agent. They're waiting to get just the right advice. They're waiting to have a certain number of followers on social, etc. And I would say to anybody who has a dream and wants to do something creative, don't wait. You get started. You start the thing one step at a time. You take the next step. You don't get overwhelmed with the big process, the big project. You look at where you're going, you look down and you say, what do I need to do next to get closer, a step closer to my goal? Both of you have in your backgrounds, they're mountaintops. I've looked at this as the ascending of Everest, Mount Everest, as I've been going along. I haven't been fixated on the summit. Right. I've been aware that the summit is out there, but where I've been keeping my attention is right in front of me. So I don't look up and get overwhelmed at how far I have to go. I look down and I say, okay, today I'm going to write my 1,500 words. Today I'm going to revise this many words. Today I'm going to do this part of it. Today I'm going to do this part of it.
And enjoy it. Have
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Let it be free.
You've got to love the process with this stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Too many people get caught up in the destination, and you've got to enjoy the journey. I mean, the fact is, I love the process of this probably more than reaching the end. You know, it's
what got you there. I mean,
I don't know how else to explain it, but it's don't wait. Time it. You know, I know we just have a couple of minutes left, but here's the thing. About 3 years into this, Carrie Fisher died. She was an idol from my youth. You know,
Princess Leia.
Exactly. Princess Leia died. And she was in the first 3 Star Wars movies. I saw Star Wars in the theater in 1978 and fell in love with this character. I mean, here's a beautiful, smart, witty woman giving orders to the men like Solo, like into the garbage chute, fly boy. You know, I mean, it just fell in love with her. And when she died at age 60, I was 45 years old at the time, or 46. I had been working on this for a year or two. Mm-hmm. And I came to the conclusion, I said, Chris, you can't wait to start your magnum opus. You've got to work on this now, because you're 20 more years is not a guarantee. You're not guaranteed 20 more years. You can't wait. You've got to get started. You got to do it now, you know, and not put it off.
Give yourself permission. Make the first move.
Exactly.
Don't wait for it. Create it.
That's the big thing, is the asking of permission. Too many people, especially young people, feel like they've got to get permission to do the thing that in their heart they know they want to do.
Yeah, if other people validated it, it can become something that makes sense. It doesn't have to make sense. Let it not.
That's a great point, Rochelle. Seriously, that's what it all comes down to.
And I want to. Do you remember this line? I love you. I know.
I know. I steal that. That gets used in there between Avery and one of the girls he's involved with, or that he ends up with. They have the same exchange, you know, because there's that. They were our heroes. They were the heroes of our generation.
And Chris, I've got to tell you, first of all, I want to thank you so much for being here. We've had a remarkable time with you, and your legion of followers, and you can tell from everything that they have written that they love your work, they love you, they love what all that you're about, and your focus and your ability. And I would just like to say, just to add to what you've said, that don't wait, do it now, and never quit.
Never quit is perseverance is everything. You know, one of my idols as a kid and as an adult has always been, explorers. Explorers have been number one for me. Hillary, Norgay, Magellan, Amundsen, all of the great explorers of history. But Thomas Edison, who said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It's work. It's work, and it's not giving up. That guy did not give up on inventing the incandescent light bulb. When asked by a reporter, you know, you failed to invent the light bulb 10,000 times. He said, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I now know 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And that's always been a motivating idea for me, is just do not give up. Just keep going. The next step, the next step, the next step. And if you approach things that way, one step at a time, not getting overwhelmed with the summit in the distance, the grand plan, the fully realized success. If you just focus on the next step that you have to take, you're going to get there.
Yep. And you cannot fail unless you quit. So that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Going.
And Chris, this book is coming out in January. Do we have a release date?
Yes, January 20. It's published. It's available on Amazon. It's also available if you go to your local bookstore. You can request it. It's printed by Ingram as well. But, all you have to do is go to Amazon and type in Chris Orcutt or Bodaciously, and it's going to come up. And the first episode is January 20. It can be pre-bought now, though. It can be pre-ordered now. And you would get it on your Kindle, for example, January 20. And then each subsequent episode, continuing the adventures of Avery and his friends, will be coming out every 12 to 15 weeks. And so all 9 episodes will be published between January 20 and December of 2027.
Well, congratulations, Chris.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Thank you, Kevin.
That's a really big deal. And by the way, Rochelle, I'm making him come back when the next book is released, because this has been a fabulous interview and it's been a great time for us. And Rochelle, I want you to take us out.
Okay, I would love to. Thank you again, Chris Orcutt, for coming and spending this time and sharing your story. For everybody listening, thank you for joining in. We love you all and appreciate you showing Chris your love as well. Stay tuned because he's going to come back and we're going to keep talking about it throughout the journey. Kevin, thank you for making all this possible. And goodbye, everybody. We love you. We'll be back soon.
Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.